In Part A, we examine how lifestyle expansion gradually increases recurring obligations, compresses contribution flexibility, and quietly rewires the household operating system. But now we move into the deeper question. Because once the lifestyle becomes structurally embedded into the system, what happens when uncertainty arrives? This is where fragility, leverage, optionality, survivability, and financial resilience all become critically important. Because financially, the real danger is not spending more. The real danger is becoming dependent on continuing to spend at the current level just to preserve system stability. And once that dependency forms, the household becomes increasingly vulnerable to layoffs, inflation, income volatility, interest rates, and economic shocks. This is where lifestyle expansion transforms from visible prosperity into structural fragility. One of the most important consequences of lifestyle expansion is increasing dependence on continued income stability. This is critically important because once fixed obligations, recurring expenses, and baseline consumption levels rise high enough, the household no longer possesses true flexibility. Instead, the household becomes structurally dependent on continued cash inflows. This is enormously important because many households mistakenly believe higher income automatically means higher resilience, but often the opposite occurs. For example, suppose household A earns $90,000, has fixed obligations of $2,500 per month, and maintains liquidity reserves. Household B earns $180,000, fixed obligations are $11,000 per month, and maintains minimal liquidity. Externally, household B appears wealthier, but structurally, household A may possess greater flexibility, lower break-even pressure, and higher survivability. This is the key systems insight. As recurring obligations rise, the system becomes increasingly dependent on uninterrupted employment, stable bonuses, stable commissions, stable economic conditions, and continued access to financing. That dependency creates fragility. Now introduce inflation. This becomes extremely dangerous for rigid systems because inflation affects groceries, utilities, insurance, taxes, subscriptions, transportation, repairs, and financing costs. Flexible systems can adapt. Rigid systems struggle. This is critically important because when fixed obligations are already elevated, even small inflationary pressures create disproportionate stress. This is where fragility quietly accelerates through the compounding effect. Because now existing obligations increase while future obligations also become more expensive, meaning the household faces shrinking liquidity, narrowing optionality, and rising break-even requirements. This creates structural pressure compounding through time. And here's the key systems insight. Fragility rarely emerges instantly. It usually compounds gradually, obligation by obligation, payment by payment, renewal by renewal, until eventually the system loses adaptability. Now we stress test the system. Suppose the household encounters job loss, reduced commissions, reduced business income, recession, market downturns, or health disruptions. This is where the true architecture becomes visible. Because strong systems absorb shocks, fragile systems amplify them. Strong systems typically possess liquidity reserves, low recurring obligations, low leverage, high contribution flexibility, and preserved optionality, meaning the household can adapt, pivot, and survive uncertainty. Fragile systems often possess high fixed obligations, thin liquidity, elevated leverage, and narrow optionality corridors, meaning small disruptions create cascading financial pressure. This is exactly how financial collapse develops, not suddenly, but structurally. And here's the key insight. The real objective of household finance is not maximizing visible consumption. I've said it before in other videos, I'll say it again. The objective is maximizing survivability under uncertainty. That distinction changes everything. This may be the most important insight in the entire episode, because externally the household may appear highly prosperous and financially strong. But internally, the structure may now carry elevated fragility, compressed liquidity, higher dependency, and reduced survivability. This creates the illusion of strength, and that illusion is extremely dangerous because systems often appear strongest immediately before pressure reveals their weaknesses. Visible prosperity versus structural strength. These are not the same thing. True resilience is not luxury consumption, status signaling, or visible wealth. True resilience is liquidity, flexibility, adaptability, survivability, and preserved optionality. That is the real systems framework. Ultimately, lifestyle expansion is not simply spending more money. It is restructuring the entire household operating system. Because every recurring obligation reduces flexibility, increases dependency, narrows optionality, and raises survivability pressure. And over time, the household may slowly transition from adaptive to structurally dependent. This is why wealth is not merely visible consumption or external appearance. Wealth is preserved future freedom. And the strongest systems are often not the most luxurious. They are the most adaptable, the most liquid, the most resilient, and the most capable of surviving uncertainty. Because ultimately, the goal is not building a lifestyle that looks successful. The goal is building a system that remains strong when conditions become difficult.